I still remember the sound of the fall, the sharp crack of bone, the scream that froze the whole house. My brother Ethan had tripped off the porch railing, showing off again. Dad sprinted toward him like a soldier charging into battle, while Mom screamed his name as if he'd been hit by a car. Within minutes, the whole world revolved around Ethan's arm. "Get him inside!" Dad yelled, sweeping him up like a hero. I stood there holding my breath, half scared, half invisible. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. Ethan was 17, a year younger than me, but somehow he'd always been the family's chosen one, the boy who could do no wrong. I followed them into the house, but when I tried to ask if he was okay, Mom spun around. "Don't crowd him, Kayla, you're always in the way." I stepped back, swallowing the sting. They laid him on my bed, because his room was too far from the kitchen where Mom could keep an eye on him. "It's fine," I whispered, even though no one asked. Dad nodded absently, tucking a pillow under Ethan's arm. "Good girl. Be understanding for once." That night, I slept on the floor. Cold hardwood pressed against my back while I listened to Ethan groaning softly in my bed. Every hour, Mom came in with water, extra pillows, or just to whisper to him, "You're my brave boy." When she tripped over me by the door, she glared. "Why are you still here? Go sleep on the couch." I moved without a word. That became my routine for weeks. Every morning, I'd wake up with a sore spine, fix breakfast, and quietly wash Ethan's dishes while Mom praised him for trying his best. When his friends came over, I disappeared to the yard so no one would see me. One evening, I overheard Dad bragging to the neighbors, "Kayla's been a trooper. She gave up her room for her brother without a complaint." They laughed and called me sweet. I wasn't sweet. I was tired, but I told myself it would pay off someday. Families remembered sacrifices, right? That hope cracked a few months later. It happened on a rainy Thursday. I was coming home from my shift at the diner, exhausted, balancing a bag of groceries, when a car splashed through a puddle and sent me sprawling. My ankle twisted so badly I couldn't stand. A stranger helped me into the house, but when Mom saw me limping, she groaned. "Oh, great, you're hurt now? What next?" Dad barely looked up from the TV. "Just ice it." I did, but by midnight my ankle had swollen so badly it looked like a balloon. I dragged myself to bed, biting back tears, only to find the door slightly open and a wet nose poking out. The dog, Max, was curled up on my pillow. For a second, I thought maybe they'd let him in to keep me company, but then I saw the new blanket, the dog bowl by the dresser, and a folded note on the nightstand in Mom's handwriting. "Ethan's allergies. Can't have Max in his room. He'll stay here for now." My chest went cold. My bed, my pillow, my space. For a dog. "Mom," I whispered, hobbling to the living room. She was scrolling through her phone. "Why is Max in my room?" Without looking up, she said, "He needed somewhere soft to sleep." "What about me?" She sighed. "Oh, stop being dramatic. It's just a bed." But when Ethan broke his arm, "Enough!" she snapped. "He was in pain. You're fine. You always exaggerate." I stared at her. "My ankle might be fractured. You don't even care." Dad looked over his shoulder, his voice low and dismissive. "Maybe if you didn't rush around like a fool, you wouldn't be limping." That's when something inside me cracked. Not a bone this time, but something deeper. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I went to the hallway, grabbed my blanket, and laid it down beside the laundry machine. The hum of the dryer became my lullaby. Later that night, I heard Ethan laughing from the kitchen, telling Mom how Max looked adorable curled up in Kayla's bed. They laughed too. Every giggle cut deeper. The next morning, I went to work as usual, on crutches now, and smiled at customers like nothing was wrong. I smiled until my jaw hurt, but inside, a quiet fire was building. By the end of the week, I stopped coming home. When I returned on Sunday, just to grab my things, my key barely turned. Mom had changed the locks. Through the door, I heard her say, "She'll come crawling back when she's learned gratitude." But I didn't. I went back to my tiny apartment near the diner, sat on the thin mattress, and looked at my bruised leg. I realized something then. All those years I'd been sleeping on floors for people who never once offered me a pillow. I stopped waiting for warmth from people who thrived on my cold. And that night, for the first time in years, I actually slept. Not on the floor, but in peace. When I left that house, I didn't just walk out of my parents' door. I walked out of their world. No one called. No one asked where I was staying. No one cared if I was alive. For the first time in my life, silence was louder than their cruelty. My apartment was tiny, a single room above a laundromat that always smelled like soap and rust, but it was mine. I could breathe there. I could limp from the bed to the stove without someone asking me to move. I could close my eyes without hearing my mother's voice dripping with disdain. I worked double shifts at the diner. Every night, my ankle throbbed until I thought it might break again, but at least the pain belonged to me. Customers left tips that kept the lights on, and the owner, a kind older woman named Marlene, always slipped me leftovers. "You've got grit, kid," she'd say, patting my shoulder. "That family of yours doesn't deserve you." The first time she said that, I almost cried. Months went by. I learned to stop hoping for apologies. My brother never texted. My mom never visited. When I saw family pictures online, barbecues, birthdays, smiles, I wasn't even surprised to see that Max, the dog, was sitting in my chair at the dinner table. They'd replaced me completely. And yet, every time I changed my bandages or passed by a pet store, that old ache came back. Not because I wanted them, but because I had once believed they were my people, that I was supposed to belong to someone. I started keeping a small journal. Every night after work, I'd write what I wanted to say to them, the things they'd never hear. How do you sleep after breaking your own child? Do you know the silence you left behind still screams? Do you even remember my birthday? Those pages became my therapy. By the next year, I'd saved enough money to take evening classes. I studied healthcare, ironic, I guess, after years of being denied care myself. I wanted to do something that meant healing, even if no one had ever offered it to me. The diner regulars became my family. One of them, an older man named Joseph, who came in every Friday with his wife, always said, "Kindness doesn't die in cruel people. It hides until someone reminds it it's real." He didn't know how much those words meant. 2 years passed like that, quiet but steady. My limp had faded, my smile was real again, and my little apartment felt like safety. I wasn't rich, but I was free. Then, one night while I was closing up the diner, Marlene came rushing in from the office. Her face was pale. "Kayla, honey," she said softly, "someone's here to see you." My heart stopped when I saw who it was. Mom. Her hair was grayer, her shoulders smaller, but her presence still made the air around her freeze. She wasn't wearing her usual smugness, just exhaustion. Behind her, Ethan was leaning against the doorframe, pale and nervous. "What are you doing here?" I asked. Mom's voice cracked. We need your help." I laughed, not cruelly, just in disbelief. "My help? You mean me? The one who didn't deserve a bed?" She flinched. "Your father had a stroke. Ethan's been trying, but the bills—" I held up my hand. "Don't you dare! Don't talk about bills like I owe you something." Ethan's voice was soft, different from before. "Kayla, we made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I stepped closer, my voice shaking. "You locked me out. You laughed when I begged for care. You gave my bed to a dog while I could barely walk. That's not a mistake, Ethan. That's who you are." Mom wiped her eyes. "We didn't realize how much we—" "Didn't realize?" I cut her off. "You had years to realize. You chose not to." The diner was silent except for the hum of the neon sign outside. Marlene stood quietly at the back, her arms folded. Ethan looked down. "Dad needs a caretaker, Kayla. We can't afford one." I stared at him. For a moment, part of me, the old, obedient part, wanted to say yes, to fix everything like I always did. But then I remembered every night I'd slept on a cold floor so my brother could heal, every laugh that followed my pain, every be understanding my father spat at me when I was the only one ever asked to give. I shook my head. You always said I was replaceable. You proved it. So replace me. Mom's lips trembled. Kayla, please. You left me outside your love for years, I said, my voice calm now. Now you can sit in the emptiness you built. She broke then, really broke. Tears rolled down her face as she whispered, We thought you'd forgive us. I looked her dead in the eyes. I did. That's why I'm not coming back. Ethan put a hand on her shoulder and led her out quietly. But before they left, he turned to me. You changed. I nodded. That's what happens when people stop mistaking loyalty for love. When the door closed, the silence that followed wasn't painful this time. It was peace. Marlene came over, placing her hand over mine. You okay? I exhaled. I think I finally am. That night, I went home, turned off my phone, and lay down on my bed, the same mattress I'd bought secondhand when I first escaped. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I owed anyone a thing. When I drifted off to sleep, I realized something profound. I had spent my childhood giving up my place so others could heal. But my adulthood, this quiet, hard-earned peace, was me finally healing myself. And no one was ever going to take that bed from me again. 2 years later, I was living a life my parents wouldn't even recognize. I had finished my nursing certification, gotten promoted at the hospital, and finally moved into a small but beautiful apartment with soft gray walls and a balcony overlooking the city. My patients called me kind. My coworkers called me strong. Both words felt foreign at first, then, finally, deserved. I didn't think about my parents much anymore. I had let go of the fantasy that they would ever love me the way I needed, but life has a cruel way of circling back. It happened one evening during my shift. The ER doors swung open and I heard a nurse yell, "Stroke incoming! Male, late 50s!" I turned and froze. It was my father. He looked smaller than I remembered, half the man who once towered over me at the dinner table. His face was slack, his speech gone. Behind the stretcher, my mother stood trembling, clutching her purse, her eyes finding mine instantly, her lips parted. Kayla. I felt the air leave my lungs. The room blurred, but my training kicked in. I helped the team transfer him to the bed, keeping my face still, professional. Once he was stable, my supervisor pulled me aside. You can step out if it's too personal. I shook my head. No, I'm fine. But I wasn't fine. Watching him lie there, silent, helpless, was like staring at the ghost of my past. The same hands that once shoved me away were now limp on the sheets. The same voice that barked orders couldn't form a word. Mom followed me into the hallway, eyes swollen from crying. He needs care, Kayla. You're his daughter. I looked her straight in the eyes. When I needed care, you gave my bed to a dog. Her face crumpled. I know we failed you. But please, he's suffering. So did I said quietly. For years. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Don't. You made your choices. You picked your favorite, your excuses, your cruelty. And now you want me to forget it all because you're scared? Tears streaked down her cheeks. I'd give anything to take it back. I nodded slowly. I know. That's the mercy you never gave me. I signed the chart, finished my notes, and walked out. When I reached the parking lot, I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the reflection of the hospital lights on the windshield. 1,000 emotions ran through me. Rage, sorrow, and something even heavier. Relief. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel weak. I didn't feel invisible. The next morning, I got a message from the hospital. My father had stabilized, but he would never walk or speak the same again. My mother had listed me as his emergency contact, but I didn't answer. Instead, I drove to the park across from my old neighborhood. Kids were playing, laughing, falling, and getting up again, the kind of innocence I never had. I sat on a bench and closed my eyes. I thought about that night years ago when I'd slept beside the laundry machine, aching, forgotten. And now, here I was, healed, whole, and finally free. In that moment, I understood what real revenge was. It wasn't yelling. It wasn't payback. It was peace. The kind they would never know. When I got home, I made tea, climbed into my bed, and smiled at the ceiling. My bed, soft, warm, earned. And somewhere in that quiet, I whispered to the girl I used to be, "You can rest now. No one's taking this from you again." Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.